This is Daniel Poppy, host of How to Write Good. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Hi, this is Baxter Colburn, host of the Verse of the Day podcast here on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my show, Verse of the Day, where we take a look at real-world experiences and applications to one Bible verse every Monday through Friday as we get an idea of what it looks like to be a little bit better of a Christian and how we can make this world a better place, one verse at a time. I hope you'll join me every single Monday through Friday right here on Public House Media. And I hope you'll subscribe by going to Apple Podcasts or wherever you find good podcasts as well. Once again, thanks for tuning in to the following broadcast here on Public House Media.
The latest headlines.
The Houston Astros, the defending World Series champions, got better adding Garrett Cole.
The insightful interviews.
Rick Saratella, NFL Draft Bible. With how much emphasis is put on the position, yet how many over the last couple of years we've had questions. Why do we put such an emphasis on drafting a quarterback number one overall?
The bottom line is there's not enough good quarterbacks to go around. And I think with the new CBA, it's really a low-risk gamble now. If you look at the playoff teams, the common denominator, good quarterback play.
The hottest takes.
I think the guy to blame is the one guy who hasn't left yet. I think Russell Westbrook is one of the bigger problems in Oklahoma City.
Can all be found on Press Row. Broadcasting is part of the Public House Media Network. Here's your host.
It doesn't matter what your name is.
Christian Heimall.
Once again, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back on Press Row. Christian Heimall here with you as we are each and every week on this wonderful Thursday, September 6th, NFL opening night. The Eagles, the Falcons, Philly drops a banner for the first time ever tonight as they welcome Matty Ice, Julio Jones, and Atlanta. This is the 2018 NFL preview show here on Press Row. So happy to have you guys here with us. Joe Pantorno, Metro New York, is going to join us. I'll get into this in a little bit, but in my opinion, heading into 2018, I know there are a lot of storylines, there are a lot of exciting picks to make, but to me, the most intriguing teams, the most exciting two teams, the ones that could really cause the most stir, play at MetLife Stadium. The Jets and the Giants, I think, are two of the most intriguing and exciting teams of the NFL season, and I'll get into that in just a little bit. Your listener questions as well, my Super Bowl picks, my divisional picks, we'll get to those at the end of the show. Do want to mention a couple of things because as much as this is the NFL preview show, there are two big headlines in sports from this week that I think do need mentioning. The first being Rick Pitino, the former Louisville, Kentucky head coach, making the rounds this week promoting his new book, Pitino, My Story. Just talking about the fact that his coaching career is over. He has said it multiple times during this week. I watched him on Good Morning America on Wednesday morning with Robin Roberts, saying that he knows his days of coaching are done. And this is pretty impressive to me because the whole thing, his firing at Louisville was centered around Brian Bowen, and the alleged payment of $100,000 to his family so that he would come and play at Louisville. For Rick Pitino, whose lifeblood is coaching, who has survived sex scandal, extramarital affairs at Louisville, who has won 2 national championships, who has put countless players in the NBA, for him to write a book and then say that he's finished coaching, that to me is a man who, he hasn't given up and he isn't in denial. To me, this says that he's focusing all of his time. He doesn't want to get back to coaching. He wants to get his name back. And that, to me, is a pretty telling sign, whether you believe him or not. And listen, I might be naive and I might be getting the wool pulled over my eyes. I fully recognize that. But there's something about Rick Pitino saying, I'm done coaching, that is just weird to me. And that's a man who is broken and beaten down by all of the negative publicity, and him writing this book and him making these rounds on the shows is just, it's mind-boggling to think that. Unless one of two things. he's accepted his fate and all he's trying to do is save face, or he's devoting all his time and energy to have his name continue to be among the greatest college coaches of all time. And I don't know which one to think. I really don't. But I was a little almost heartbroken watching Pitino earlier this week do some of those interviews. The other big storyline this week, Colin Kaepernick and, of course, the Nike campaign. And listen, all I'm going to say 3 things about this, and then we're going to move on because some folks have been asking me about this. But number one, the ad campaign I'm fine with simply because it's a message that we tell a lot of people. The Just Do It campaign is similar to if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. Believe in something if it means sacrificing everything. At least you have morals. You have a set of values. They may not be what everybody else agrees, but they're yours. And I don't think there's anything wrong with promoting that. Where I think it becomes tricky is the fact that Nike has now put themselves as this paid sponsor of the movement, of the demonstrations. And that makes them very undesirable to the NFL. I don't think it makes them undesirable at all to the NBA. The NBA understands that. The NBA understands that its players are social activists and want to have a voice in their community. So I think this is a great move for Nike from an ad standpoint and from a monetary standpoint. And to you idiots who are burning or cutting off or damaging your Nike gear, you're not helping the case at all. You're not. And I'm sorry, but to the people saying they should be donating, these people are not rational enough to think to do that, so why are you trying to rationally speak to them? My father used to say, don't argue with stupid people. They will drag you down to their level and beat you with experience. Don't try to rationally talk with these people. Don't. Just do it. There's a great saying in the South, bless your heart. Just look them right in the eye, bless your heart, and move on. It's that simple. You're on Press Row here, broadcasting as part of the Public House Media Network. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, review, share with your friends and family on Spreaker.com, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts as well, Spreaker.com, Stitcher.com. We're on iHeartRadio. You can also check us out at thephmedia.com. Get yourself some awesome Press Row gear. Hey, by the way, if you wanted to, there's a great sports podcast that I host on Mondays called The Cheap Seats. They are sponsoring and presenting the Public House Media Pick'em League. It's a free league. It's a straight-up pick'em, no spreads, no confidence. Go in there. It's on ESPN. Head to the Cheap Seats by Public House Media on Facebook. You can join the league. We'll share it on Press Row and compete against all the hosts here at Public House Media. Win some awesome gear. If you can't do it this week, do it next week. But just have some fun with it this NFL season. I mentioned the Jets and Giants. They are the two most intriguing teams in the NFL, in my opinion. When you look at what they did a year ago, when you look at their standings from 2017, and you see just how bad the Giants, 3-13 last year, were the Giants, the Jets 5-11. These are two teams that finished in the basement of their respective divisions, and I really do believe this, will compete for playoff spots this year. I don't know if they make it just yet. We'll get to my picks in a little bit, but ignoring all the other great storylines, I get it. Deshaun Watson, Andrew Luck's back. The Chargers, can they do it? Jacksonville, are they going to have the same success? Cleveland, a lot of people think Cleveland is a trendy pick. The Cowboys have to be better than last year. Aaron Rodgers is healthy. The NFC South is going to be tremendous. Are the Rams for real? There's a lot going on, but the most intriguing teams are the fact that the Jets and Giants could combine for a win improvement of 10 games, if not more. It's insane to think that. It's crazy. But you've got some great young talent there. You've got a lot of excitement for both fan bases. For the Giants, it's Saquon Barkley, it's Pat Shurmur. It's the team built to win now, Odell Beckham. And for the Jets, it's Sam Darnold. It's the hope that it's Joe Namath reincarnated. We'll see about all of it. Joe Pantorno of Metro New York covers those teams. He's going to join us on the other side of this break. We'll get to your listener questions as well as my Super Bowl predictions. It's all coming up. You're on Press Row.
This is Sam Kirby, host of Cinema Stories here on Public House Media. Thank you for tuning into the following broadcast here on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my show, Cinema Stories, where we talk about movie and TV news and reviews, and maybe, just maybe, we'll learn a little something about ourselves. If not, then maybe I made you laugh a couple of times. I don't know. New episodes air bi-weekly on Tuesdays. Thanks again for checking out the totally spectacular following broadcast here on Public House Media.
Listen to every episode and get the latest shows sent right to you. Subscribe to Press Row on iTunes, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Spreaker.com, and Stitcher.com. Or visit us online at www.thephmedia.com. This is Press Row with Christian Heimall, a Public House Media podcast.
Back on Press Row, our 2018 NFL preview show. Christian Heimall here with you. I'll get you my Super Bowl picks in just a little bit. I'll give you a brief teaser. One team played in the Super Bowl a year ago, so that's all I'm pretty much going to give you right now. That being said, it is going to be an exciting season, and I really do believe this. I know some people think I'm crazy, but I really do believe the two most intriguing and exciting teams of this year in the NFL are in New York. The football giants and the Jets, I think, will be the most intriguing and exciting teams of this year. To tell me if I'm right or wrong, a guy who covers the teams for Metro New York, friend of the show, Joe Pantorno, is back. Joe, thoughts on what I just said there? The two most intriguing teams of the 2018 NFL season both play their home games at MetLife Stadium.
Oh, first off, Christian, thanks so much for having me. Always glad to be on the show. And, yeah, I'm going to have to agree with you here. These are two really enigmatic, interesting teams where on paper there's an awful lot of promise, and it's just one of these deals where you really can't get a good read on them. And so right now, this is always the most exciting time of the year, especially for teams like this, because, you know, we could be thinking that this is a playoff contender and one of them or both of them might crash and burn completely. Or we might have two teams seriously making a run at a conference championship. We have no idea. And that kind of, that kind of unknown factor is what really makes this so interesting heading into the regular season.
And I think that's the main tipping point for me is the fact that you, like you said, you have two teams on paper that are just, I mean, it's been a very long time since both fan bases in New York have been this excited at the start of a season. And it's kind of two different ways. For the Giants, it's a brand new head coach. It's Saquon Barkley. It's an offense built to win now. And for the Jets, it's the promise of what Sam Darnold brings to this offense, even though we've seen the past with Todd Bowles. And if things go south, this is probably Todd Bowles' last season with the Jets. But what about both of these teams makes them so exciting?
Well, you touched on it, and it is the introduction of that youth. With the Jets, we were entering the preseason here thinking that Josh McCown was going to be the starter, and Darnold would be at least holding the clipboard for his first season, almost like a red shirt. And the way he came in and just took over, I mean, you heard Josh Norman's comments. When in the world does Josh Norman compliment anybody? And he's given this guy rave reviews. So really, I mean, if that was any indication of what the Jets have, this is something extremely special. Just the kind of poise that a 21-year-old has, and he's only going to get better. And he still hasn't even played a snap yet. So again, this could all blow up in their face because this is the Jets. We know their history. It's been 5 decades of mediocrity and disaster, to say the least. But just the possibility of having that golden boy, that franchise quarterback for the first time since Namath, that kind of promise is what has Jets fans so revved up for the season. And for the Giants, it's the introduction of something new with Saquon Barkley, but teaming up with something old with Eli Manning. Eli's on his last leg. He's 37. We don't know how much really he has left in the tank, and it really depends on how good his offensive line is going to be. But he's going to have such a nice security blanket in Barkley, who's a dual threat. He can catch out of the backfield. He can beat opposing defenses any way with any kind of running style. So we're looking at somebody who, again, this guy was drafted, and they already said that he's a better version of Ezekiel Elliott with the dual threat capabilities of a Le'Veon Bell. So we're looking at, the early front runner for Offensive Rookie of the Year. And we'll have to look at his hamstring, of course, but there are no restrictions on him heading into week 1. So I think it's time to unleash him and see what he can do.
Speaking with Joe Pantorno, Metro New York, here on Press Row, the 2018 NFL Preview Show. Again, I mean, when you look at these two teams, of course, in their divisions, you've got the two reigning conference championships in the New England Patriots, Tom Brady, the Philadelphia Eagles, which even though they're not going to have Carson Wentz, they still have the Super Bowl MVP starting week 1. So if you could start with the NFC East and kind of handicap the Giants and their chances in this division with the defending Super Bowl champs.
The wonderful thing about the NFC East is that we really have no idea. There's no sort of consistency here where, you have one year you're thinking the Cowboys are going to win it, and all of a sudden the Redskins come out of nowhere. And really, that's how it was last year. I remember going into the season thinking that the Eagles were going to be an 8-win team. And then Carson Wentz starts putting on an MVP performance. So it's really hard to tell, but right now, the way I see it, the Giants have a legitimate shot of getting a wild card berth. I don't see the Eagles losing out on the NFC East this year. And for the Cowboys, there's going to be questions about if Elliott can put on the same kind of show he did his rookie year, if Dak Prescott can kind of get out of that sophomore slump. But I'm a huge fan of Dallas' defense, and that in itself, I think, is going to put them right in the conversation for the number 2 spot in the NFC East as well. So really, if the Giants' offense can fire on all cylinders, and this might be a team that simply outscores their opponent, and you're looking at a few wild cards on defense, Landon Collins can come up with a Pro Bowl-like season, that might be enough to sneak the Giants into a playoff spot with, say 9 or 10 wins.
And then for the Jets, I mean, it's Tom Brady, as everybody pretty much believes it's Tom Brady's division to lose. But I mean, still, it just feels as though at any given moment, Miami could do something in this division. I mean, what about the AFC East?
Yeah, always, and as long as Tom Brady has a pulse, I'm always going to put the Patriots up top of the AFC East. But I'd like to think that this reign of terror is almost over. The Dolphins are always a wild card, and I look at Ryan Tannehill mostly for that and his inconsistencies. This is somebody who's been promised to, perform on a Pro Bowl level, and last year was lost due to injury, but I really haven't been able to see that leader that can win a big game for you. And add that with the loss of Jarvis Landry, and Miami's a little bit hobbled heading into the season. The Bills, basically, with their quarterback situation, I really can't see them making it back to the playoffs. That was a flash in the pan, first time in 17 years, and, I hope the fans really enjoyed that because I don't think that's going to be happening for a while again. But, again, the Jets, you're looking at, second place in the division again. And in the AFC, I'm not sure if that's going to be good enough to make the playoffs, but, you're coming down to the last weeks of the season and you have 7 or 8 wins and you're definitely going to be in that conversation. Again, this all comes down to the Golden Boy Darnold, though, and if he can really live up to the hype.
NFL season begins tonight, and we're speaking with Joe Pantorno. Metro New York covers the Jets and the Giants. Of course, we're all going to cover what happens on the field, but there will be storylines outside of the stadium, outside of the locker room, whether it be the new targeting rule, whether it be the anthem policy, which kind of died down, but then Colin Kaepernick and Nike earlier this week most likely stirred that back up a little bit again. What do you see as some of the biggest off-the-field headlines heading into the season?
Well, definitely the targeting rule is one, where, again, we're entering the season and the league goes around to all the teams and they show these instructional videos and it doesn't help. These teams come out of these meetings even more unsure of what targeting is. And you're looking at a concussion rate that continues to rise in the league. I mean, last year, it went up 13.5%, the rate of concussions. So the league obviously isn't doing a good enough job, and any kind of, any sort of confusion from the players' part isn't really going to help. And really, at the end of the day, it's just further proving that the league doesn't necessarily care enough about player safety, where they can't come to a certain resolution here, and they can't help their players out. If there was a certain way to do this, you'll obviously see the targeting go down, the concussions go down. But for the time being, you're gonna see a lot of 50-50 plays where there's going to be half the league that they're going to go in like human missiles, like we've seen for the last 20 years, using their bodies, their helmets as weapons. And there's going to be other guys where they're just they're going to pull out. They're going to ease up on tackles, and who knows what's going to happen. They're leaving their team susceptible to big plays. So that's, I think, for me, and because I believe in the national anthem policy, that's to each their own opinion, and I don't think we have enough time on the show to really get into that for now. But definitely something to look out for is targeting and how defensive backs are going to use it. And I also want to see if the league will implement the penalty on offensive players, because too often we see players, ball carriers, initiating contact by lowering their head and going in on would-be tacklers. So that's definitely another point, and to see if they can maybe even balance things out.
Should be interesting to see how that all plays out, especially with, as you mentioned, even offensive players using their head as a weapon. Before I let you go, Joe, and again, we're speaking Joe Pantorno, Metro New York, you got to bet a week's salary. What's most likely to happen? Giants make the playoffs, Jets make the playoffs, both make the playoffs, or neither?
Oh, man, I will say that the Giants make the playoffs, and the Jets come up one game short, but will be in the playoffs next year, especially, and you heard it here first, when they get Le'Veon Bell.
You really think that? I know you tweeted it out the other day. I know you.
I believe that if he can get to free agency, the Jets have enough money and they're getting the pieces together where I think that it's going to be a prime destination for free agents in the next few years.
Should be a fun one to watch. We'll wait out for that, and that might be the call of the decade right here on Press Run. We appreciate it. Joe Pantorno, Metro New York. Enjoy the weekend, buddy. NFL back in action this week.
Thanks, Christian. You too. Thanks for having me on.
And it's Joe Pantorno, Metro New York. He tweeted that out on like Tuesday night, and I did a double take because I can't believe that the New York Jets at some point will be a free agency destination. That's very strange to think, but I mean, who knows? It wouldn't surprise me in the least. All right, when we come back, I'll get you my Super Bowl picks as well as your listener questions. It's all coming up on the other side of the break. You're on Press Row, broadcasting as part of the Public House Media Network.
Want to be part of the show? Go to Facebook and search Press Row Podcast Public House Media. Or find us on Twitter and Instagram at PressRowPHM. You can also email the program, PressRowPHM@gmail.com.
I'm the Greg.
And I am Dave Show.
We host the Greg and Dave Show on Public House Media.
Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out our show, The Greg and Dave Show, where we talk about strange, bizarre, and sometimes just downright quirky news stories that you may not have heard about.
A new show comes out every Wednesday. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes. And hey, thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media.
This is Press Row with Christian Heimall, a Public House Media podcast.
Wrap up shop here on Press Row. Christian Heimall with you, broadcasting as part of the Public House Media Network. Big thanks to Joe Pantorno, Metro New York, for joining us as always. And I kind of tend to agree with him. I'll give a little bit of a tease to my playoff, my Super Bowl picks here. But if I had to put a weak salary down, I think the Giants make the playoffs and the Jets don't. The AFC East is not going to be competitive at all, but the AFC as a whole will be. But we'll get to that here in just a little bit. Get to some of your listener questions as we do every single week. You can submit them on social media, Twitter and Instagram handle @PressRowPHM. You can find us on Facebook, Press Row Podcast by Public House Media. You can email the show, pressrowphm@gmail.com. Find me as well on Twitter @Chris Heimall, ChrisHeimall. All football questions here this week, as it is our NFL preview show. The first comes from Jake in Pittsburgh. Le'Veon Bell still not at reporting to the Steelers with Week 1 upon us. What does this mean for his future in Pittsburgh? Look, if anybody thinks that Le'Veon Bell is staying in Pittsburgh, you should probably go and get your head examined, or at least stop drinking. But here's my issue. There are a lot of Steelers players upset about Le'Veon Bell, and I get it. You want your guy there. You want your one of your best offensive weapons there. He still hasn't signed his $14.5 million franchise tag. Becomes a free agent in 2019 as long as he signs by Week 11. But you've got veterans who are saying, quote, he effed us, telling ESPN on Wednesday. Someone else says, if you don't want to, Marquise Pouncey, if you don't want to be here, it is what it is. Hold out 10 weeks. And then Pouncey said, I just felt confident that he was going to come. But now that he didn't, obviously it's Le'Veon over the Steelers, and we're the Steelers, and we're going to play as the Steelers. This isn't 100% Le'Veon Bell's fault. This is Le'Veon showing the Steelers, listen, you don't believe in me. You don't believe that I'm important to your franchise, to your future. I don't believe I'm important to you guys either. And I don't think I'm important to your guys' present. That's the biggest thing. This was a long time coming for the Steelers, and I'm surprised that it took this long. I'm actually surprised this didn't happen last year, because Le'Veon Bell is one of the premier talents in the NFL. And the fact that he was not treated like that when he's seeing guys like Odell Beckham, Aaron Rodgers, Kirk Cousins, for crying out loud, getting $90 million guaranteed, Khalil Mack, Aaron Donald. There's so many guys getting money, and Le'Veon Bell believes he should be one of them, and he should. A lot of this falls on the Steelers front office. So I understand while the players are upset at Le'Veon Bell, they also need to look at the guys signing their checks too. You don't bite the hand that feeds you, but at the same time, Le'Veon Bell has been feeding a lot of those Steelers for the last couple of years. I do ultimately think he signs. I do ultimately think he comes in probably Week 3 is when he'll actually play. But who knows? There's a lot of money for him to be made. And as you heard Joe Pantorno say, the Jets are lying in wait and just hoping to see what happens. So Colin wants to know, do the Browns win 4 games this year? I think they win more than that. I think the Browns, I really do. I honestly believe this. I think the Browns compete for a wild card spot this year. Opening up the season at home in 3 of their first 5 games. Pittsburgh, without Le'Veon Bell, is a huge help, obviously. The Jets, which you still don't fully know what to expect from them, and we'll know more by Week 3. And then Week 5, Baltimore, which Baltimore is not a scary team. You do have, obviously, the Saints on the road, which will be a tough game. Oakland, which I'm not as impressed with, especially now without Khalil Mack. I think this is a Cleveland team that probably goes 500, if not 9-7, and they really do compete for a wild card spot. They've got some favorable games at home. I mentioned the Jets, the Ravens. You've got Atlanta at home, which by that point, who knows? Carolina, who knows? Cincinnati at home late, obviously. But they've got some favorable games at home. You want to face Atlanta and Carolina at home if possible. You'd love to face the Saints at home if possible too, but that's just not going to happen. So I think the Browns are a team that go 8-8, maybe 9-7, and we'll see what happens. That could be a lot of fun. Last one here, Eric in Indianapolis. Does Andrew Luck's surgically repaired arm help the Colts get back to the playoffs? This is tough for me. The AFC South is probably one of the toughest divisions for me to pick, just because I don't think the Jaguars take a step back. The Texans get so much healthier. Not only Deshaun Watson, but J.J. Watt, Whitney Merciless as well. And then you never know what to expect with Marcus Mariota and the Tennessee Titans. So I don't think the Colts make the playoffs this year. I think they're right on the cusp. They're on the outside looking in just barely. But expect a much better season, and most importantly, expect a healthy Andrew Luck, and that's all you can really hope for if you're a Colts fan. As always, we appreciate your guys' questions. Give you my playoff picks. I'll run through them real quick. If you want to hear my full breakdown of it, I mentioned it this past Monday on the Cheap Seats with John Lauder, so I'll just run through it real quick. The AFC East, it's a no-brainer. The New England Patriots. AFC North, Pittsburgh Steelers win that division. The AFC South, I had a really hard time picking this one, but the Houston Texans, I think, just because, again, the healthy Deshaun Watson, J.J. Watt, Whitney Merciless, that team was running on all cylinders last year, and as long as they stay healthy again this year, they'll be just fine. The AFC West, I got the Chiefs winning the division, and then I think for wild card, I think it's the Chargers and the Jaguars as the two wild card teams in the AFC. NFC-wise, the Eagles are still the best team in football, as much as it kills me. Like, it really hurts to say that. They've got the best offensive line. They've got the best defensive line. And they got the Super Bowl MVP as their backup quarterback once Carson Wentz is healthy. So the Eagles win the East. The North is the Green Bay Packers. The South, I think, is the New Orleans Saints. And the West is the Los Angeles Rams. Now, the wild card is where it gets interesting because you could legitimately have both the Falcons and Panthers in the wild card. The Minnesota Vikings are going to be right there. I love the Giants. I really do this year. I think they are that second wild card team. I think the first wild card team, though, is the Carolina Panthers. I think the Minnesota Vikings miss the playoffs. I understand a lot of people are excited. Kirk Cousins, Jarrett McKinnon is back healthy, but I think a lot of people are overlooking the loss of Pat Shurmur and what that is going to do to this Vikings offense. Look at last year's 2017's Atlanta Falcons. After making the Super Bowl in 2016, granted, blowing a 25-3 lead, the Falcons, they did make the playoffs as that second wildcard team, but they dropped their win total. They went from 2016, the Atlanta Falcons were an 11-5 team. They blew away the division because it wasn't very good that year. They struggled. They finished third in the South last year at 10-6, I believe, but it's a much stronger division, and I think it'll be very similar in the North with the Minnesota Vikings, who lose their offensive coordinator. Green Bay has gotten better with Aaron Rodgers, going to be healthy for a full season. Chicago has gotten better, especially now with Khalil Mack on defense, and then you can never count out Matt Stafford and the Lions. So that's probably my hot take for the NFL season, is the fact that the Vikings missed the playoffs after being so close to the Super Bowl last year in their own building. But we'll see exactly what happens. Super Bowl-wise, I've mentioned this. I think it will be in the AFC. I think it'll be the Patriots and the Steelers in the AFC Championship game. And in the NFC, I've got the Rams and the Saints. I think it's Brady versus Breeze in the Super Bowl. I've been wanting this Super Bowl matchup for years. I want Brady. I want Breeze. I think the Saints are a team that is built right now to do it. They added Mike Gillislee early this week after he was cut from the Patriots. That is huge. And I just love Drew Brees, and I love the Saints. So my Super Bowl pick, I got Saints over Patriots in the Super Bowl. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. Hope you guys enjoy the football this weekend. As always, it's going to be a lot of fun. Check us out on social media, Twitter and Instagram at PressRowPHM. You can find us on Facebook, Press Row Podcast by Public House Media. Email the show, PressRowPHM@gmail.com. Find me on Twitter as well, at Chris Heimall, ChrisHeimall. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, review, Spotify, Apple and Google Podcasts, Spreaker.com, Stitcher.com, iHeartRadio, and of course, thephmedia.com, where you can get yourself some awesome Press Row gear. Big thanks to Joe Pantorno of Metro New York for joining us as well. Big thanks to you guys, the listeners, for your tweets, your comments, your questions, your all-around support. We appreciate it every single week, and we look forward to doing it again next week. Until then, I'm Christian Heimall, and we will see you on Press Row.